What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Success After Trauma, where we bring on different guests and they share their story, the traumas that they've been through, what it was like, and how they're continuing to create success today. Today's guest is Matthew Stevenson. He's an advocate for veterans and children. For most of you that know my story, that is near and dear to my heart. I'm excited to share his story with you today. Matthew, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me. So yeah, to be honest, man, my life began with trauma. And I know that sounds metaphorical, but quite literally when I was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around my throat, so which caused the circulation in my oxygen to be cut off from my brain, which resulted in brain trauma to the left hemisphere of my brain, resulting in cerebral palsy, much like a stroke. It's fairly mild. I don't have a speech impediment. I do have some mobility skills and things like that. And so we've had just a wild ride as it relates to we being my biological family and my core family, and then just me as a young man, and then trying to find my place in the world, and then ultimately being in this what I usually refer to as a field of outcasts of mortgages and real estate professionals, folks who generally kind of accidentally their way into success through the experiences they've had. And so that's really my story in a nutshell. We can unpack that a little more for sure.
Wow, that's incredible. So when did you first have the realization of, or should I say, when did the world first share with you the realization of your differences?
I like the way you phrase that. I did not know I was different until I went to public school. So my mom homeschooled me through kindergarten and first grade. And I had friends, we went to church a lot. I played baseball. I don't ever remember as like a kindergartner or first grader in baseball thinking I'm really different. I remember playing, but I don't remember being different. But whenever I got into public school, I do expressly remember the differences. I remember I'll never forget Tori. Tori, I hope you hear this podcast, but I would not give Tori my scissors. And Tori, she screamed at me, called me some names, and said, "If you don't give me those scissors, I'm going to bite you." And she threw down the R word, and I guess we all know what the R word is. And then she bit me. She bit me on my arm, and she ganked my scissors. Right? So I'm 38 with a successful mortgage career. I've got a great staff. I've got a beautiful wife, lovely children, and here I am. And that just it sits with me after all years. So that was, I remember it like that is definitely one of the pivotal moments that I was like, why am I different? And it just kind of escalated from there, getting into, children are ruthless. And I'm not saying I was any better, but children are ruthless. So
can you take us a little bit through mindset for you? So as you continue to grow into adolescent years, how did this play out for you mentally?
Yeah, mentally, that's not a good place for me, to be honest. I'd like to say, I just was always an overcomer and things were good. I had a lot of great parenting. My dad's my hero. So I'd say he's my best friend. He always told me I could do what I set my mind to. But the fact of the matter was there was a lot of people saying I couldn't do a lot of things. And so I got depressed. I stress ate. And I would just wallow in my sadness. Now I'm an early millennial, so like that whole alternative grunge culture very much appealed to me. So chains and Vans and black Jinkos and with red print and just the overwhelming sensation that I wanted to have a sad, lonesome song. So I went out and did everything wrong, and I did. And I found myself in a very hopeless spot. I was suicidal by the age of 13. I wanted to take my life, and I was really excited. My dad was a huge impact player in my life, and I was raised. He's a pastor, and my mom's a teacher. But I felt like I always had to grow up and be religious and academic, because I've got these two roles in my life that I have to be religious and academic, and I can only cheat in school. You can't really cheat your way into holiness. And so I was mad at God. I was mad at a lot of things. I was mad with everybody. And so I wanted to end my life. I wrote a letter. I put on 3 doors down, and I decided I was going to plunge a knife into my heart. And then like that night, I felt an overwhelming sense that my future would not be secure in eternity if I took those steps. And I had a paramount faith shift for me. I had pursued, man, porn and even that at this point, 13 years old, porn, sexual addiction. I've been addicted to porn probably since I was 10. Some chemical dependency already, that just, sneaking out back and hiding from my parents, the stress eating. And so I felt like I had pursued everything that I could pursue as it related to the things that I wanted to see with my eyes, the things I wanted to experience with my body, the things I wanted to possess of my own pride and volition, and it all left me empty. So that night I felt absolutely hopeless, and I found hope in Jesus Christ. For me, that was a pivotal night, and it changed me drastically. From there, I began to really embrace hope in a completely different identity, that I was actually created for purpose. I wasn't an accident. I wasn't the product of just flipping around in my mother's womb the wrong way. I wasn't just a clump of cells, that I had value. A lot of people want to argue about the viability of life, and in this current political climate in November of midterms, I was worth something. And for the first time, I believed that.
That's awesome. So that's incredible. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing, for having the vulnerability to share that. What was the following days, week, months? What did that look like as you started to gain hope in these days?
Yeah, it was crazy. Because like I was truthfully, like all that old time religion talk, like, born again, I was someone completely different, and everybody could tell, and nobody could tell why. And I wasn't going to tell a freaking soul, because I wasn't going to go to like therapy or counseling or sit on the dude's couch and talk about my feelings. I wasn't doing any of that BS. So like, I just kept that all in and just let the transformation roll. So everybody was like, man, Matthew's really just embracing his puberty and his manhood. And that was usually a lot of it. Look at him. He's going to the gym. He's got so much self-confidence. Now he's lost a little weight. He's getting a little taller. His voice is starting to change. I don't see, it wasn't puberty, man. That's just a hard time for everybody. It was self-sustainability in my faith that really transitioned me. And so I began to share about that with a lot of people. And then realistically, I began to see the nuts and bolts of my faith has legs and it has hands, and it dealt a lot with, I was not transformed for the purpose of having a belief system that's different, but I was transformed in order to make the world a better place. And so to begin to give and go and do in ways that I had only been selfish before began to really expose me to how valuable life was, not just my own, but others as well. I went to a camp called Camp Barnabas. It's a great camp outside Branson, Missouri, for handicapped kids. It's faith-based, but these kids have cerebral palsy like I do. But man, as now a 15-year-old, I'm going to camp, and I sign up and I pay to go to camp, but I'm not having shaving cream fights and chasing girls out by the lake. But what I'm doing is I'm providing 24/7 care for a kid that's in a wheelchair. And so all of his needs, all of his physical needs, all of his sanitary needs, all of his food needs. And so now I'm exposed to this at 16, 17 years old, that I'm here. I exist to help other people. And so that was just a message that began to be ingrained in me. And I began to look for opportunities to embrace that and to really try to transition the world, and to tell people like, there were two twin brothers, James and John, and they have severe CP, cerebral palsy, and just say, hey man, you know what, me too, but look at me now. So there's always hope, and there's always a future. And so that kind of stuff was huge in those latter teen years for me to face a lot of obstacles and overcome stuff. I mean, we could talk about all sorts of really cool victories. I was the state champion drum major of Texas, which is kind of a big state. And here I am handicapped, and I'm the one directing the band, and I end up with this 6-foot trophy. I mean, that's just absurd. It's just absurd that the handicapped guy's the state champion drum major of Texas. And I tried to keep that at my mom's house, but she was like, you got to get all this high school crap out of here. I was like, Mom, aren't you proud of that trophy?
Mom.
Come on now. Come on.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this. So between like 14, 15, I know you said 15, 16, you're already giving back.
Yeah.
How were you nurturing your faith in those early days? I have to assume family was
Family was
awkward bringing you to
integral.
church.
So like, I mean, so man, so everybody's stories are so different. But for me, I mean, but we can honestly talk about, you know what, for folks who have trauma or who have different types of baggage or issues they face, a lot of that is done with the absence of a mother or a father or a combination thereof. For me, I didn't have that. I had a great parental involvement in my life. My parents are good folks. They encourage me. Like I said, my dad verbally encouraged me regularly. I can never remember my dad saying, "You're never about anything. You're just a piece of crap." You know, my dad never said stuff like that. And I've got plenty of friends that they don't even know who their dad was. But my dad really built me up as a man, and he instilled in me that even when I would go on a date, he would say, "You have to remember who you are and whose you are," meaning who you stand for and who you belong to and who you represent. And so ingrained in that time that I represented something bigger than myself was very, very common. So yeah, in those pivotal moments, I had a lot of faith nurturing. Did a lot of independent study for sure, but I cannot deny that the impact that my dad as a really solid guy poured into me in those years really impacted me in an amazing way.
That's incredible. Are you comfortable sharing with us what did dating look like for you as you get into those older
Yeah.
adolescent
So
years?
yeah, when you're the fat handicap kid, it's, all the ladies want that. That is the dad bod of the mid 90s.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was completely weird for me as well. And so I said I had lost a bunch of weight, and but I was still handicapped, right? And so, but I had this overwhelming confidence, which is really crazy because now, like, I would just like I would speed ask out girls. I'd be like, "Hey, Sarah, hey, you want to go out Friday?" "No." "Okay, great. Sally, what about you?" And so,
That's awesome.
and so like I had this confidence, but I did get shot down a lot. And then I remember just as high school went on, I ended up landing a girlfriend because I mean, we're all salespeople. If you turn in your numbers, you're gonna make a sale. So you make enough calls, you write enough letters, you'll get a sale. And so I finally sold this poor girl into being my high school girlfriend. And so we were together for probably 3 years. It was a good relationship. But then, and getting into college was really overwhelming for me. I was trying to find new identity, find out who I was, find my place in this world, this role as an independent man. And I started stress eating again. That was an old and I went back to really a lot of that stuff that I had been involved in just a decade before. And I'll never forget. She told me on one day, she said, I never thought I'd like a fat guy." And I was like, "But you do." And I think that was her way of saying, "But I don't." And so we ended up breaking up. And that was hard for me. I took some time, and my dad, the pastor, he said, "I'm going to tell you something that my dad told me." And I thought it was just going to be the sage, biblical, wise thing. And he said, "Son, you don't know whether you need to shit or go blind." And I looked at him. I was like,
Hold on,
"What?"
can you say it again for me?
Yeah, he said, "Son, you don't know whether you need to shit or go blind."
Okay.
And I was like, "I don't know what that means." He said, "Then that's exactly how you feel. You don't know what you got to do. But the good news is you don't got to do either." Right? Because
Wow.
it's this whole like I'm in turmoil, I'm in trauma, I'm in grief. What do I do? And honestly, the answer is sometimes you just got to be there,
Yeah,
right?
I believe
And that
it.
was his point. That was his point. That you don't have to go
Powerful.
blind, you don't have to go shit. So like you're just there. You can't make something happen to relieve yourself. It doesn't work that way. And my grandfather was a World War II vet. So that was his sagely advice. Sometimes you don't know whether you need to shit or go blind. And so, but that stuck with me. And so
That's
I went
powerful.
through
I
this.
love that message. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just went through that grief process for a while, went to college, and made some friends, and got back some self-confidence. And ultimately I met my wife, and I met her at church. And she didn't want to date me at all either, but I really liked her. So I really, I went for broke on that one. It was the best
Yeah,
sell of my life, best sell
that's
of my life.
awesome.
So closed the
How long
deal.
how long have you and your wife been together?
We have been together since since 2006. So that's what's that? Nearly
Yeah, what is that, Matt? 14, 15, 16
gotta
years
help me.
maybe? Does that put us there?
Yeah,
Like 16 years?
16 years. Yeah, 16
That's a
going on
long time.
17 years. Yeah. And so we had our first kid about 18 months later. And yeah, and then we were like, you know what, we want to help some folks. And so had one kid and we had this
How long did you guys I'm sorry, how long did you guys date before you guys got married?
before we got married. Under a year.
Okay.
Under a year.
Okay.
I'm a big
And
fan
then
of,
kid
yeah,
comes
yeah,
along
yeah.
and then take us from there?
Dating, marriage, kid. And then after the first kid, we had done this whole, I don't want to call it evangelical savior complex, but it's kind of what it was. This whole, hey, you know what? We've got some money, we've got jobs, we have a home, so we need to help the poor people. But because at the time, I remember actually thinking, or I probably said to my wife, you know what? We've got a kid. We could probably just adopt a kid and we'll have that perfect family of four, right? And then we just want to have that perfect, and then we'll do our part to really sprinkle a little love and just adopt a kid that's in need. So we went through state adoption training with Department of Children and Families for Kentucky, and they called us, and I'm 23, 24 this time. They call us and they say, hey, great news. You guys said you wanted to adopt a kid. We got a perfect candidate for you. We got a little girl. She's 9 out of 9. She's the 9th kid. Mom has lost every other kid. Mom's on substance issues. She's been a prostitute. She's been in and out of jail. She's an alcohol addict as well. It's going to be a slam dunk. You guys easily adopt this kid. And so we said, okay, great. So the day that Olivia came into our home, we thought she was ours. But again, God's kind of a funny way of doing some stuff. So here we are, 23, 24 years old, and this lady is like 55. And so we meet, the kids have visitation with their parents. And so we take her to visitation, and she calls us over, which is just scary. I mean, honestly, when you're that young and you have no idea how to generally interact with people who have had a rougher background than you. And she said, hey, can you help me? I said, yeah, what do you mean? She said, I want to get my life right, and I don't know what to do. And I was like, and you're asking me?
Right?
I mean, I think I was working at Walmart trying to go through school, and my wife was a nurse. She was carrying all the weight of the family. So we talked to her a little bit, and like her kid had some respiratory issues, and she smoked, and she smoked since she was like 7, literally. Wow. So this woman had over 45 years of smoking history, chain smoking. And we were like, you can't raise a child with major respiratory issues while you smoke. That's not going to happen. She quit cold turkey.
Wow.
We said, hey, you know what? You're going to have a job, because the state's not going to give you your kid back if you don't have a job. And so she got a job, and she said, well, what's different about your family? I said, well, maybe there's some weird Christians. And she was like, I want to be that. And so she found a church. She got plugged in, and it was a real church that like welcomed people who were broken. Not this, hey, let's go to church and network for friends and business relationships. It was, hey, we're here for people. And so she literally changed her life and got her kid back. And I remember it was horrible for me. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. I love her name's Patsy. I love Patsy dearly, but like I had bonded with this child. I was told, I trusted the government when they called, man. And they said, this is your daughter. And I was like, okay, here we go. Yeah. And she went back. And
bro, that's an incredible story. I can feel that story when you told that, man.
It was rough.
That's incredible. Really rough. Are you still in contact with the young lady and the mother?
Yeah, we actually went to visit them several months ago and just let our kids play, which is, again, just really interesting. You drive into inner city Louisville on the bad side of town and hop out with, now we've got 4 biological kids in our minivan. And so we go into this, public housing and hang out with these folks and eat some hot dogs and ramen noodles and catch up. It's just interesting. So yeah, Yeah, we are
Man,
still in contact with them.
that's
And
awesome. Oh, go
I
ahead.
said we're done, and we ended up doing it for another 12 years. We had 16 kids come through our home
Wow.
that had gone
Did you
through
guys,
the.
I'm sorry, did you guys,
Yeah,
so I know you did, so coming through, you were dealing with foster, did you guys adopt any along the way,
we
or
did
was it all
not.
foster?
We did not, and we thought we were going to adopt every single one, Greg. We
Yeah.
thought every single time, like it's a slam dunk. This is it. This is the one. This is the one. This is the one. And we didn't adopt one.
What was
And it wasn't the kids never became eligible for adoption. Some kids they had a family member step up and say, hey, you know what, I want to take my niece, my grandson, stuff like that. Some kids went back to a really good situation, and I could give several examples of that. Some kids went back to really bad situations, but they all went back. And it was really ironic that we agreed 13 years ago to jump into this to adopt one kid, and then it ended up raising 15 kids. So
So what was your, what's the shortest term you've had a kid in your house, a child?
like 7 days.
Oh,
That
wow.
was, yeah, that was an interesting one. Kid gets picked up from the hospital. The state is pressing against mom because the guy that she is dating is on the pedophile list. And and she's like, well, like he's on the list, but like he hadn't hurt my kids and he hadn't hurt me. And like, I'm not gonna stop seeing this guy. And they're like, what would you go take your kid? Man, she got a lawyer and got her kid back, like split. And I was like, you go, girl. I mean, like, what am I gonna say? She didn't hurt her kid. This kid wasn't positive for anything. It was just a healthy born kid who had not gone through any trauma. And so, like, I mean, that existed. So there's times like that. I'm really excited to see people get their kids back. And
Yeah.
there's times where I've had kids for 3 years and nobody worked their stinking plan and nobody's improved their situation. And I'm thinking we just wasted a lot of people's time, money, and resources and heartache and pain and frustration because these kids are going back to the exact same situation they came
Yeah.
from.
Yeah. What was the longest that you had a kid in your house, child?
About 3 years.
And so walk me, if you don't mind, just at it.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, so you've seen in those situations in those 3 year spans where people were attempting to make their situation better, it wasn't getting better, and
absolutely.
inevitably that kid that child ends up going back into a very, very similar
Absolutely.
situation. Man, that's just sad.
Yeah, it is. And so, I mean, all of my experience is in my state of Kentucky. And so there's quotas, right? There's quotas for, just like there's quotas for cops to have speeding tickets at certain times. And they say there's not, but we all know that there is. And it's the same thing for resolutions. So you want to see, because like bad things happen to kids, we know that. So let's find out and let's make sure we're meeting those needs. And then also we know that people can get better. So let's have resolution there. The ultimate goal of foster care is always reunification. It's never designed to take somebody away from their family. It's designed to that you have the opportunity to put a child in a safer situation, and parents have a chance to coach and understand and have a better opportunity with their life as well. And like I said, I've seen it go both ways. I've seen great resolutions, and I've seen just everybody's just, we just had a 3 year visit, and these kids went back to absolutely.
Do you guys still participate in fostering?
We do not. We do
Okay.
not. No, we pulled the plug after this last one.
Yeah. 13
And
years is a long time. How
yeah,
are you willing to discuss, or what do you want to, what are you willing to share around what was the psychological, mental, emotional cost to your family?
man.
I'm sure there was, and we don't have to go down this road at all.
No,
I,
you gotta let me put that in words.
yeah,
Um, it was I would say it was a price instead of a cost.
okay.
So Ziegler talks about, whenever you're talking to your prospects, are you more concerned about the cost or are you more concerned about the price? And your prospect says, well, what do you mean? Well, the cost is the short term, but the price is what you're going to pay in the long run. The price was well paid. My kids, Greg, are some of the most mature, developed kids. I envy my kids in a lot of ways. I'm not bragging on me, I'm bragging on them. Man, they have gone through multiple infestations of lice. They've gone through exposure to, I mean, my 6-year-old knew the F-bomb, and I didn't hear the F-bomb from somebody's mouth until probably I was 17 or 18 years old, right? And so like that kind of stuff existed. You had just the exposure of what the kids would talk about that they went through and never had. The aspect that, for example, they were really excited. Those kids would just glow. They would glow over a pair of shoes. And so like, for kids that grow up in our neighborhoods, pair of shoes, I just need a new pair of shoes. Just it's what it is. I just got to have it. These kids were excited, and to see that really changed their perspective in a lot of ways. There was times of violence, and so where I had to step in and protect my family from older kids. There was times of embarrassment. One of my kids called in a bomb threat at their university and got arrested by the federal marshals, and the FBI went through my phone records because I was her foster dad. So I'm the one who signed for the phone. So all that existed, but realistically, I would say the price paid was well worth it for the kids that went back, but also for my own kids. My kids just got back from a trip to Guatemala where they worked in an orphanage for 10 days and they loved it. Right. And so no air conditioner, no Nintendo Switch, no TV, no smartphones. They beans for breakfast and beans for lunch and rice for supper.
How old are your kids and how many, forgive me?
Yeah, I've got 4 biological kids. They're 4, 9, 11, and 14.
Wow. So 11 and 14 went to the trip or what?
All
of them?
All 4. My wife, we took all 4.
What?
We took all 4 to Guatemala.
Wow, that's incredible. Were you on the trip as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. What was that like? Tell me a little bit. I mean, yeah, give me a little. How did that?
Yeah, it was. We had. My wife's connected to a guy who helped start this orphanage down in Guatemala City, and it's Guatemala. If you look up the adoption history in Guatemala, it honestly became like a baby mill. There's so many 80s and 90s adoptions out of Guatemala that quite literally they had business models of beds upstairs, labor and delivery, second floor, adoption agency, bottom floor, boom, boom, boom. And it was just baby mills. So Guatemala in the late 90s just banned adoption 100%, no adoption internationally whatsoever. And so there are a ton of orphans just based on that alone. But not only that, you understand that 60% of all Guatemalans live on $2 a day, and another 10% on top of that live on $1 a day. Wow. And so you have a culture that has a lot of and I don't want to use the word breeding, but you have a lot of kids. You just have a lot of sex and a lot of passion culture, and you have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And so then that whole child, that parent again, back to my childhood, my parents had a huge impact on me, but these kids have no parents, no mom, no dad. So the orphanage we work with is called Hope for Tomorrow. If you can put a link or something to your listeners, that'd be great. Those what they do is they want to provide the semblance of a family the best they can, because in Latin American culture, you don't get to be 18 and move out and be your own man like I did, right? That's not the way it works. You are part of the family until you're married. Well, at 18, the state-run orphanages turn these kids out, and they just go to the streets. Where are they supposed to go? They don't have any life skills. They don't have any jobs. They don't have any family. They're just out. And so what Hope for Tomorrow does is they keep kids until they're ready to launch. So I had gone 10 years ago, and this was our second trip, and I was honored to see some of the kids that I saw back then, just still at the home working. So one girl was showing me pictures of her boyfriend. She hopes to get married this year, move out, have a family, and quite literally, like, the ladies that work there, they call them their house moms, and they'll say Mama Luisa or Mama Rosa or whatever their first name is, but they call them mom, and that's the attitude and not institutionalized homes. And so that's the idea, is to truly give these kids a hope for tomorrow, not just, hey, let's get you fed. Okay, you're 18 and alive. You should be grateful.
So that's incredible. I'll make sure we include the link as well. So it's Hope for Tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
send it to you, make sure we can confirm it.
Okay, perfect. Now, I know today you're one of the presidents of the Metro Veteran Mortgage Advisor, which is a mortgage industry group that is training and supporting other lenders that are, I know, help correct me here, right?
Yeah, you're on the right track. So we train and support other lenders, other loan originators to so here's our mission statement: a program designed to educate and empower the lending community to serve and protect our military homeowners and encourage military home ownership. That's it.
So, and for everyone listening, and I'm not part of the VMA. However, I've been able to participate on some of their events, and I'll be going to some of their events in the near future. I absolutely love and support everything they do. In my terms, what they do is create awareness on how everyone can help support veterans at a higher level. And that's absolutely incredible. Let me ask you this: when and what got you into the mortgage industry?
I got accidentally into mortgages.
Okay, tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was a top. So I ended up, after all of that, I mean, surprise, God really just kind of rang my bell, and I decided that I wanted to be a pastor. Obviously, I'm not a very historically traditional pastor. I try to really just get down to the meat and potatoes, and that didn't play well in every culture. So a lot of people will still, at that time, still want high polished church, and I wasn't that guy. So I decided I was going to start a church in South Kentucky, and started to do that, but I need to pay for my my living. And so I saw an ad for a security company, and they said, hey, you know what, 100% commission. You got to talk to strangers. I thought, man, I do that all the freaking time. You got to knock on doors. If you visit our church, we'll show up and knock on your door and bring you a banana nut cake. You better watch out. And
you're like, don't threaten me with a good time, all this.
Yeah, I was like, man, I was born in the briar patch, and so I joined this security company off of an ad off of Craigslist, which is exactly where you want to find your next career.
Oh yeah.
And so I did it, got into it, took off. It took off like a freaking rocket, Greg. God was so kind to me. I jumped into sales, jumped into the psychology of selling. I jumped into Ziegler. I jumped into learning everything to be the best I could. When I interviewed, Greg, this is gold for salespeople who've overcome issues. I walked in suit and tie, looking like a preacher, and sat there all polished. My manager comes in. He whips into the parking lot. I'm early, right? Because corporate man. I'm there early. He whips in late in a Camaro convertible. He hops out, and he is a Cuban Miami guy who they brought up to Kentucky to run this new branch in Kentucky. And so he's got his floral shirt half buttoned down. He's got his Ray-Bans. He's smacking his gum. He comes in, he looks me up and down. He says, "Are you my interview?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am. Yes, sir. Pleasure to meet you, sir." You know, all these things. And so we sit down, and I tell him about my background, my history. Of course, I'm trying to impress him, right? So I tell him that I got all these degrees, and I do. I have a couple master's degrees, and he said, "I don't care about any of that bullshit." I said, "Okay." He said, "But I got to ask you one thing." I said, "What's that, man?" He said, he did the whole Wolf of Wall Street. "Sell me this pen." He said, hey, sell me this pen. And I was like, "You want to buy a pen?" Like, that sucks. I was like, "I don't know anything about sales." He said, "Do you really have 2 master's degrees?" I said, "I do." He said, "I just got one question then." He said, "Are you still willing to learn?"
Wow. That's a great question.
I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, if you got master's degrees, you had to learn." And so my problem is with a lot of adults right now, they stop learning.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think you're smarter than I am in the job that I manage. You probably should leave. I said, "No, man." I said, "I'll be honest with you. I need this job. I've applied to 47 places. They all tell me I'm overqualified. I'm applying to work at every $30,000 salary job I can get." And they say no. He said, well, if you're willing to learn, I got great news. I'll never fire you. He said, you will either be successful or you'll quit.
Or you quit. Yeah, I love it.
And I was like, let's do it. And so, man, I just drank from the fire hose. I did everything they said. And then later on, man, me and a bunch of people just got corporate America right on out the door. We've made too much money going to scale down, millennial. I was told, if you do the right thing and work hard and always be loyal, you always climb the corporate ladder. That's a bunch of bull. That doesn't it will fire you. And so I got fired, and then I cried and I was like, God, what? And then I sat down and I thought, dang, man, I'm number 12 in the freaking, or I'm top 12% in the country in sales. I can do anything. I can do anything.
Right. That's
And I
right.
remember what my dad said. I remember everything that we'd overcome. And so there was a lady who I had been in a BNI group with, and she said, you ought to be in mortgages. And I was like, psh, I don't need to be in mortgages. I make a lot of money. And she was like, can you tell me what's a lot of money to you? And
Can you tell me what's a lot of money?
I was like, give me close. I make like 65,000. She said, do you feel like that's a lot of money? I was like, I'm the richest person I know. I'm the richest person I know.
That's great. Since you what was her response? Yeah, what'd she say, man?
Yeah, she was like, that's not a lot of money.
Like, let me show you something.
I'll make a lot of money, let me know. And I put her off for a year, but when I got fired, I called her back. And so she got me in the industry.
That's awesome.
I remember I sat down at one of the top realtors in the area. I said, hey, do I need to be a realtor or a lender? He said, well, it takes 90 hours to be a realtor, takes 20 hours to be a lender if you pass the test, and most people fail it. I said, I can take tests. So I'm going to be a lender. And so that was it. That was it. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And so I didn't make a sale for 6 months. I had all this horrible advice. Then finally I started hanging out with some of the coolest people I could find on social media who were doing stuff. And I just embraced best practices. And Alex Jimenez, and you were friends. Alex was one that I found quickly 6-7 years ago on social media. And I just started to honestly just implement a lot of the stuff that Alex taught and did, and just roll that out. And then it made me very successful. So best practices is huge. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find what's working and do those things.
Keep going.
And so from there, just one thing led to another. And started just really to bring in a lot of the value system that I'd been taught. I started to really push social media. I began to kind of just continue to spread my message of goofy humor and advocacy for a variety of things. And I believed in the law of attraction. So I attracted the right people and I pushed the right people away. I didn't push away the wrong people. I pushed away the right people, because you're not going to click with everyone. Even Jesus said that, woe to you if everyone speaks well of you. And so that was huge, is that I would say something controversial that I believed in, and people would be like, you shouldn't say that, you'll lose business. I'm thinking, oh God, I hope so, because those are not the people I want in my transactions at all.
I gotta get them out of here quick.
Yeah,
Dude, I love that message. So where was, I know you do a lot of, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the VMA. That's what kind of brought us into the mortgage industry as a whole. But before we dive into the VMA specifically, where was your passion? I know you're a huge advocate for veterans, not just through the home loan, but in general.
Right.
Where did that passion come from? Was that grandpa, or what ignited that?
Shame. It came from shame. And okay. I guess I've never articulated this story, Greg, so I might lose it a little bit. But it came from shame, because I was in fact, I've got one closing out now. I had a lady call me and she said, hey, are you Matthew Stevens? You're the second chance lender. And I laughed and I said, no, that guy died. Which meant, like, I had done rescue loans 6-7 years ago. And that's what I've tried to build my brand on, because that's what I was taught. That was the first thing I was taught. And so then I started just doing first time home buyer this, first time home buyer that. And then I met Michael Fisher, and Michael Fisher is the founding president of VMA. And he educated me about how bad vets have been screwed financially. And initially I was like, that can't be true. And then he reminded me, like, where I had lived. So I lived at Fort Knox, and I lived at Fort Jackson, and I lived right off Two Notch Road. where there's Hooters and buy here, pay here car lenders at 28% interest and payday cash advance and titty bars galore and all these financial predatory institutions. And then he started to show me CDs from big companies that just raked vets over the coals. And he made a very clear line and distinction that basically, if you're not for vets, like advocating for the fair treatment, not just the whole Captain America, I serve my country, but as you know, Greg, vets have gone through the shit. And I'm not talking about just the sandbox. I'm talking about trauma and frustration and anger and loss and marital grief. And they have sacrificed. And so if I'm not advocating for vets, I might as well be advocating against vets because I'm not doing anything to stem the flow of predatory practices.
Wow.
And that was it. That was it for me. And so I jumped on whole hog. I behind closed doors, I'm sure somebody basically said that guy is a poser and he's trying to do some stolen valor. I've never claimed to be a vet. I'm not a vet. I just love vets, but I try to speak the lingo and I try to help because there's a correlation between the trauma that my kids have experienced and the trauma my vets have experienced. And it's easier for people to look at a 7-year-old little girl and say, sweetheart, it's okay. I'll hold you and dry your tears. Let's go take a bath. Do you want bubbles in it? As opposed to holding a 28-year-old guy with sleeve tattoos with a nicotine problem and some substance abuse issues who cusses every other word and saying, you know what that guy needs is a hug. Right. And so that was it for me. It was absolute shame. And so from that line being drawn pretty clear for me, I guess about 4 years ago, that has been a huge component of my brand and what we do. It is, you know, we've covered this very easily. It's, you know, I want to be a part of something bigger than me, and serving vets is that. Plenty of people can do every other type of loan, and I can specialize in VA loans and do them well and help people. And that's why.
When was the VMA's about, the Veteran Mortgage Advisor Group is about 2 years old? Does that sound
About
right?
2 years old. Yeah, Veteran Mortgage Advisor is about 2 years old. A conglomerate of veteran advocates, a couple of vets themselves. So Eric Inslee's an Army vet, Brad Stinson's a Marine, and then just other veteran advocates. Myself, Alex Jimenez, Michael Fisher, Jason Steyer.
Tell me a little bit about the inception of the VMA. I remember hearing a little bit in the background from Alex Jimenez. I know you guys now the launch took place about 2 years ago, but before that there was a lot of planning going on. What was the behind the scenes? What was that chatter? What did that sound like? What were the goals before we even launched?
The goal has always been community, right? So this is not a lead generation program. This is not hey, here's how you're going to get your leg up in your career or your branch or anything like that. This has ultimately been about serving veterans. That's it. And so the community aspect is huge. We have a very strong community of VMA members. Our leadership is very strong. I mean, we are just like any other leadership organization, but we're together, right? And so to that vein, that background looked like making sure that when we mold this together, we are molding community and advocacy. We're not a nonprofit, we're an educational organization. So what somebody does is they buy our class. It's $6.99. You get in, it's over 20 hours of education about the VA loan, about advocating for veterans, about how to be involved, about how to better originate VA loans, and to be more excellent in the craft of VA origination. That's what it is.
Well, I know. I know you guys also now. I don't want to misspeak. I don't know, but I've watched in the events. One of the coolest things that I thought you guys did in the events that I took place in was helping educate, lead, inspire, teach your people how to go out and teach others about the VA home loan.
Absolutely.
That was incredible to me, because if you speak to 2 people and they go out and speak to 10 people and they go, it's just huge. I thought that was very, very smart. Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead, tell us about
the message is the mission, right? And so we want to get it out there that the VA loan is not subpar. The VA loan does not reflect a weak buyer. The VA loan is not inferior in financing. The VA loan is not a second hat to a conventional. And we can show that with facts and numbers and figures.
it.
So a big part of what we do with our students and our members is to train them to make those presentations to agents, to get in front of them, to do that type of stuff, to create social media content, and then to ultimately bang that drum over and over and over. And so, I mean, we talked about the law of attraction. For me personally, and everybody, it's interesting how we all do different things different. Alex does very, very well in Nashville and Middle Tennessee, and then Fort Campbell and all the places that he's at. He does a lot of active duty. Jason does a lot of active duty. We have guys who do a lot of reserves. We have guys who, like me, who majority of my vets within 20 miles of my house are retirees. And so there's a lot of different ways to advocate and educate. But as we push the message out, the right people come to us. One of my websites is VAloansDon'tSuck.com. And so I address a lot of the myths about VA loans. And so I'll tell an agent, hey, or a insurance person, hey, put me in there and your phone is VA Matt, and just save my website is VAloansDon'tSuck.com. Now, do we do a lot of other stuff? Sure, I do. I'm a lender. I do all sorts of stuff. But again, if I'm going to choose to work with one person, it's going to be a veteran of a VA loan. End of story. And so that's where we begin to see a lot of the traction take place. Is the more our members push the message, the more we're advocating and changing the perception of the VA home loan. And that's what we want to do.
I love it. I can't believe how many myths still exist. I'm privy just from getting to be involved with you guys. I hear about a lot of the myth busting that you guys, myth busting education that you guys provide. And I'm shocked at the amount of misinformation that freely exists around the VA home loan right now still.
It's still a ton. It's still a ton. And I mean, you got to remember too, there's new agents coming in every day in this industry. And so then they hear something, or they get on some social media group and they hear some chatter, and then they believe it. And then all of a sudden we're already trying to drag it back uphill because we're already behind the ball in education and advocacy. So that kind of stuff is really, really huge. It's huge.
So I think that I'm a veteran myself. I've done combat myself, and I think it's a very powerful message to share. And I love the unique positioning that you have, Matthew. That I love talking to people. I always support veterans. Always near and dear brothers in arms. And I love sharing the message that us as veterans, we don't own the monopoly on PTSD. No one ever claimed to, but sometimes civilians may feel inferior to confessing or to realizing that they have PTSD, thinking, hey, I wasn't a veteran, or hey, I didn't go to war.
Right.
That's not the only way that PTSD is caused. You've had a lot of trauma in your life, a lot of trauma. You had exceptional parents, which is incredible, but you've had a lot of trauma in your life, and you decided to make something of it. You decided to be a leader. You decided to be an advocate. What do you have to share with someone one chapter behind you right now?
So, Greg, and I'll tell you one more trauma story, because boy, do I have a flurry of them. I was driving to work as a substitute teacher, making ends meet, 2011. And I've always lived kind of in my adult life out in the country. And so I'm on a 2-lane country road. If you want to, just 2-lane country road, and I'm headed into town. Well, this car pulls out like halfway into the highway. I see them. I begin to merge over into oncoming traffic. Nobody was coming. And then, so I'm going to miss them. They realize how far out they are, and then they gas it. And then I hit them right here. And then they go flying off into a field, and I hit them right in the driver's door. And that pregnant lady died. And I'll never forget seeing her dad run across that field on a walker, and the helicopter come in and try to take her to get her airlifted to Vanderbilt to try to save her or the baby, and they both died.
Wow.
Now, it wasn't my fault, right?
Yeah.
And so that was what everybody would tell me. It's not your fault. It was not, and I knew it wasn't my fault. I never. there was no arguing. There was nothing in me that said, this is completely your fault. Now there's little whispers of, if you only had done this, maybe, but truthfully, 100%, she was in the fault.
Yeah.
I had a guy call me. He was a pastor. And he said, I know what everybody's telling you. He said, I know everybody's telling you it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We're praying for you. We love you. He said, I know that's not your greatest fear, is that nobody's going to love you or that it's your fault. He said, I believe your greatest fear, because I had the exact same situation happen to me 5 years ago, is that you're now worthless and you're no longer usable in the mission that you were on. And I broke down. I broke down really hard because that was it. Because I had been trying to help people and I wanted to help people. I wanted to love people. And now I didn't want people whispering that I was a baby killer or that, you know, that I had taken this little girl. I mean, she's in her 20s, this girl's life, that I had ruined these people's home and their family. I didn't want that cloud, that albatross around me saying that I was no longer useful. And you're right. Vets don't have a monopoly on PTSD. I still see that man running across that field right now. And it happens. So for those who have gone through trauma, and you can have hope and you can have encouragement that you're not alone. You know you're not alone. Life sucks for a lot of people. That doesn't make you feel better. But what does help you understand kind of where you are is that you're not done, right? You're not done. And you have purpose. I believe that each of us is created. I don't believe that you're an accident. I don't believe that anybody's the product of a bad experience or a bad marriage or just a bad run-in or oops, I can't believe this happened. I forgot to wear a condom. Nobody's an accident. I believe everyone's created for purpose. And because of that, I believe you have purpose. I believe I have purpose. And what we have to do with that is ultimately say, what am I truly here for? What the world screams that we're here for is therapeutic hedonism. What you need to do is worship yourself and whatever feels right. That's what you need to do. Buy it, smoke it, rub it in, snort it, do it, live it. That's what you need to do. Wear it, see it, whatever makes you feel good to make yourself exalted. And man, I've lived that life and nothing's further from the truth. My life is about service to God and others. And that has transformed my value and it's transformed me. So know that I believe that people who are broken are used for great things. So have some hope there. Anybody wants to chat about that with me, they can.
I appreciate that. If someone wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that, Matthew?
I'm not hard to find. You can Google me. Just Google Matthew Stevens. You should probably find my cell phone number or my office number. You can schedule an appointment on my Calendly. It's there as well.
Perfect.
So I'm not hard to find.
We'll have your name down there so people can do that. I appreciate having you on today, and I appreciate everything you shared, Matthew.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
That wraps up another episode of Success After Trauma. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and download us on your favorite podcast streaming platform. I'll get it out, I promise. And if you're listening to the audio, go ahead and check us out on YouTube at Success After Trauma. If you have a story that you're ready to share, please reach out. It's Greg at gregpihs.com. Be great. It's already in you.